to page 275. These are the problems that were assigned for homework, classwork on Thursday. Comparing and ordering fractions and decimals. So as I said, the key is if you don't know the fractions, what they're, you can't tell just looking at them, then you can always convert them to decimal, right? Now, you shouldn't be converting this problem to decimals. Number one. The other thing is, be careful. Negative numbers go backwards, right? So the larger absolute value is a smaller number when both are negative. Marcus.
I just think like whenever there's negative numbers, less is more.
Whenever there are negative numbers, less is more. That is true. That is true. The smaller value is a bigger negative number. Okay, or bigger number. So negative 3/5 and negative 4/5, when the denominators are the same, obviously you can just look at the numerators. This is more pieces, but these are negative, which means that this one is going to be further to the right or greater than.
I apologize for the interruption again. Per the admin, please do not bring the kids outside at all.
I knew that was coming. Okay. Mixed numbers, but the whole number parts are the same. Again, the denominators are the same. 1/8 is smaller number than 5/8, but backwards because they are. Yes, Tom? Go ahead.
Just letting you know, I'm considering a little bit of the book of the greater than.
What? I'm sorry, I can't understand what you're saying.
When it has like that blank page, you can see like a little bit of the greater sign.
Oh, yeah, I know. That's because I wrote them in without the boxes in the last class. So, all right, 6 2/3 and 6 1/2. How do you know which one of these is bigger? Kenny?
Denominator.
Well, because this is a 3 and this is a 2, so the 3 is bigger.
Oh, wait. I don't know.
Evie?
1/2 is not as big as 2. 1.5 is half of 3, and 2 is larger than that, and that would mean it's larger than that.
Okay, so that's one good strategy here. So what she's doing is using the 1/2 benchmark strategy, which we didn't really talk about. Maybe we'll just do this in their head, right? That since this is a half, is 2/3 bigger than a half or smaller than a half? And since half of 3 is 1.5, 2/3 is more than half, which means that the 2/3 is bigger than 1/2. I mean, most people just know that 2/3 is bigger than 1/2. Now, if you didn't know that, which it's possible, okay, I get it. Some people aren't very good at math, and they have to use all the strategies available. And because you have a calculator here, you can always convert these fractions to decimals. Now, why did I only write 6.6 over here? Oh, because that's all I need to compare them, because this side is 6.5. So you only have to write out as many digits of the decimal as you need to be able to compare the two numbers and answer the question. Okay, so 6 2/3 is bigger than 6 1/2. Two strategies for this one. One, you can just divide and use decimals, but what else could you do to make this problem not so difficult? Number 4, to compare these two fractions. Alicia. Well, neither of these are going to be mixed numbers because the numerators are smaller than the denominators, right? Marcus. Okay, you could make a common denominator, a least common denominator, because it's, if you look at these two denominators, hey, that's pretty simple what the lowest number is that both of these divide into. You can make 12ths into 24ths very easily, just multiply by 2. Okay, so if you change this to 22 24ths, right? And again, they're negative, which means less is more, like Marcus said. So less, the 17 instead of 22 would be greater, right? Or you don't do that well, you can always use your calculator and divide these. I don't know what they come out to as decimals. Anyone do it as decimals and write it down? Okay. Should also, obviously, these questions where all you have to do is put a greater than or less than sign, and it says use a number line. You could use a number line, but I'd rather see the work that justifies how you got your answer. Right? Typically, that's converting both of them to decimals or converting them both to a common denominator, unless it's really obvious like that. All right, moving on. Meg answered 92% questions correctly on the second quiz. She answered 27 out of 30. Which one was the better score? 92% as a decimal, 0.92. 27 out of 30. You might be able to do that one in your head. Okay, Kyle.
The 27 of 40.
Yeah, what is that as a decimal? Or what would you, how do you get that as a decimal? Divide 27 divided by 30, and you get what, Marcus?
0.9.
0.9. Okay, so there's some work, and what's the answer to the question? Marcus?
Social studies.
Well, they were both social studies. The first quiz, right? So the first quiz was 92%. The second quiz, 27 out of 30, which was only a 90%. So the answer is the first quiz. Make sure to answer the question in problems like this. All you did was write 90% or 92% or something like that. That's not answering the question. Which quiz did you get the better score? All right, putting numbers in order. The strategy for putting numbers in order, unless they are all the same format, is to make them all decimals. So what I do is underneath each one, I write the decimal version of that number. 0.23, 0.19, right? Move the decimal 0.2 places for percent. And 1/5 as a decimal, if you don't know it, is 0.2 or 0.20. Then put them in order. Make sure you know which order it's asking for. Sometimes they ask greatest to least. Sometimes they ask least to greatest. This is least to greatest, so that means the 1 in the tens place is the smallest number, because these two are both 2s in the tens place. Then you go to the next decimal place. This one's a 0, this one's a 3, right? So I put them in order like that. And then your final answer must be rewriting the numbers in the original format that they were given to you. If you stop here, you will lose half the points for this problem on a quiz. The answer is 19%, because that's the smallest one, 0.19, then 1/5, and then 0.23. So you have to rewrite the problems in the original format. Rewrite the numbers in the original format in order, okay? Decimal, I'll convert that to a decimal, negative 0.625, which is, now these are negatives, so that means the least of these is the biggest absolute value, which is this one, because it has a 2 in the hundreds place, so does this, but then it has a 5, and this one is a 0. So this is the smallest, then the 0.62, then 0.615. Do not get confused by how many decimal places there are. You compare each decimal place and see which one is bigger. And if they're the same, then you go to the next decimal place. 52% of the 6th graders, 0.57 of the 7th graders, and 2/5 of the 8th graders. So again, we'll convert all of these to decimal. 52% is 0.52, 0.57 for the 7th graders, and 2/5 is 0.40. list them in order from least to greatest. So least is this one, then 0.52, then 0.57. So the answer to the question is Matt?
Oh, 8, 6, and 7.
8, 6, 7. That's the answer. 8, 6, 7. Okay, because it says list the classes in order. You don't write these numbers in order. Answer the question. All right, 1 and 7/12 is 1.58333333333. How many do you have to write out? As many as you need. In this case, you don't need any, because 1.1 5/8 is 1.625. So you go to the first tens place there, and this one is smaller. Alligator eats the bigger number, right? 5/6 is 2.8333333. And this one is just 0.8. Okay, so again, if you need to, add zeros so you can compare the decimal places. Questions on any of these? Which ratio does not have the same value as the other three? How do you know? Chad, you do this one, number 12?
I do not do that.
Pardon?
I do not do that.
No? Someone at home? Kenny?
I did.
Oh, go ahead. Who is that? James?
Kylie.
Kylie. Which one doesn't have the same value, Kylie?
Give me 1 second. I need to go back to the page. I put 0.08 because 0.08 is 8%. And the rest
And all the other ones are,
80%.
yeah, these come out, this comes out to 0.8 or 80%. This one's 0.8. This one is 0.8, 12 divided by 15, and this one is 0.08, okay, which is not the same. All right, number 14. Are these fractions in order from least to greatest or greatest to least? Explain how you know. I like this question. Riley.
Everyone refers to least because the smaller the denominator is, the bigger the fraction.
Okay, so she said greatest to least because the smaller the denominator, the bigger the pieces, bigger the fractions. And since all the numerators are the same, they're all the same number of pieces, but smaller new denominators mean bigger pieces. So 5/6 is bigger than 5/7, which is bigger than 5/8, which is bigger than 5/9. And the answer is greatest to least. Thinking about what the numerators and denominators of fractions mean is something you are supposed to do. Something you are supposed to have learned from 4th grade when you started talking about fractions. The more pieces you split a whole into, the smaller the pieces are. That's the bottom number of a fraction. The top number is how many pieces you're talking about. Okay? Good. Oh, I like number 20. Gracia and Jim, we're shooting free throws. Gracia made 4 out of 15. What is her decimal free throw making percentage? What is it as a decimal, 4 out of 15? Anyone got that one written down? Evie? Did you write these down at all?
I said, so I put them over as fractions.
Yep.
So,
So 4 out of 15, did you convert that to a decimal? No.
no, I just compared the two and which one was bigger and which one was smaller.
Yeah, that's not so easy to do, though. Well, maybe it is. What did you get for Jim?
10 over 16.
Yeah, 10 over 16. How come it's not 6 over 16? The 6 is the ones that he missed, right? So this is something to be careful about when you're reading the problem. He missed 6 out of 16. That means he made 10 out of 16. And now you can look at these two, and again, you may be using your half benchmark that you talked about before. This is less than half of the shots, and this is more than half of the shots. So obviously, Jim made more, okay? If these numbers were closer and you couldn't tell as easily, then you convert them to decimals, which I just do automatically. 0.625 and 0.26 repeating for this one. So Jim is the better free throw shooter. Number 21, rewrite them all as decimals. 49 over 50 is 0.98. Put them in order. 0.075, obviously that's the smallest one. Then 7.49, then 7.98. Then rewrite them in the original format. First is this one, 7.5%. Second is 7.49. Third, 7 and 49 fifths. Here's the spot check. These are negative numbers. 1/25 is 0.04. So again, less is more. So the least of these is the biggest, and the biggest of these is the smallest. This one would be the biggest, 1.4. 1.25 is next, and then 1.04. So rewrite them in the original format. So this is what I'm looking for on the spot check, that your answer looks like this: negative 1.4, negative 1.25, negative 1 and 1/25. If you on the quiz wrote 1.04 here instead of 1 and 1/25, you'll lose a half a point for not rewriting the numbers in the original format. If you had them backwards because you forgot that negatives went the other way, you would lose a half of a point for missing that they were negatives. But you compared them correctly, but just forgot that they were negatives. All right. So you get partial credit as long as you write the work down for these. You don't write the work down, then you don't get partial credit if it's wrong. Typically, I'll ask you to rewrite them all as decimals and then write them in order so that I can take off points if you don't write them as decimals. Okay. Use the table to show the lengths of these small mammals. 1/3 for the eastern chipmunk, 0.3 repeating. The European mole is 5/12 as a decimal. 5/12 as a decimal. 5 divided by 12. 0.416 repeating. .416, and the 6 is repeating. Okay, and then this one is 0.25. So, which animal is the smallest? A, which is the smallest? In the 10th place, it's the masked shrew. Which animal is smaller than the mole but larger than the spiny pocket mouse? Bigger than 0.25, smaller than 0.416 would be the eastern chipmunk. And lastly, order them from greatest to least. Greatest to least, so be careful. So the answer for greatest to least is mole, chipmunk, mouse, shrew. And lastly, sales tax rates from 4 different counties. Writing these as decimals. Okay, so 0.0575. Remember, percent to decimal, you move the decimal point 2 places. 5 7/8%, 0.05875. I know what 7/8 is. 11/200 as a decimal. Well, 11/100 would be 0.11. So 11/200 is half of that. 0.055. You can do that in your calculator. 9/160. No idea. Go to the calculator. 9 divided by 160. 0.05625. Okay, so now it says put them in order from least to greatest. So they're all 0 in the tens place. They're all 5s in the hundreds place. 6, 7, 8, 5. Oh, so that just puts them in order right there in the thousands place. 5 is the smallest, then 6, then 7, then 8. Okay, so that's the work that I do to do a problem like this. Now I can fill this all in the right way. Campbell, Hamilton, Oakland, and Green. And you can put all these things in here too. 0.055, 0.05625, 0.0575, 0.05875. Which county has the lowest? Campbell. Okay, so that is the most difficult problems for the quiz.